He didn't plan on inviting her. And she definitely didn't plan on saying yes. But fate doesn't ask for permission when it crashes two lives together like waves against the rocks. It all began on a rainy afternoon in Manhattan. Elena Carter was just a 26-year-old delivery girl, tired, drenched, and clutching a brown paper bag of Mediterranean takeout. Her sneakers squelched as she stepped into the lobby of the Sterling Towers, a luxury hotel she would never have afforded even a glass of water in. She was supposed to drop the food at the front desk, but she bumped, literally, into someone she shouldn't have. Lucas Bennett, 32, CEO of Bennett Holdings. The kind of man the press loved to call a cold-blooded miracle, because he rebuilt his late father's crumbling empire into a global real estate juggernaut before he turned 30. And now, he was running late to his ex-fiancee's wedding. The irony? He didn't have a date. Not because he couldn't find one, but because none of the women he knew would agree to attend that wedding. When Elena dropped the food and stammered an apology, Lucas barely looked at her. But then, something strange happened. He stared at her for a few seconds too long. And then, without warning, asked, "Can you walk in with me?" Elena blinked. "Excuse me?" He took a breath. "I need a girlfriend. Just for the afternoon." A long pause. "I'll pay you $5,000. You'll just pretend, smile, dance once, say nothing stupid." It sounded insane. And maybe it was. But Elena's rent was 2 months late. Her brother needed medicine, and she had just worked a double shift with no break. So, she nodded. That one nod would change everything. Because the moment they walked into that marble-floored reception hall, all eyes turned to them. And no one, not even Lucas, could predict how this fake act would spiral into something dangerously real. Elena Carter had never belonged to ballrooms. She grew up in a trailer park in upstate New York, raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car crash. She worked odd jobs since she was 15, cleaner, waitress, florist's helper, and most recently, delivery girl for a struggling restaurant in Queens. Her clothes never matched. Her nails were short. She didn't own perfume. Just a small bottle of lavender spray that reminded her of her grandmother. She wasn't fragile, but she was tired, and the idea of putting on a mask, even for a few hours, felt like the one thing she had strength left to do. Lucas Bennett, on the other hand, was the son of Manhattan royalty. Boarding schools, Ivy League, penthouses, private jets. He had everything money could buy. But something had cracked inside him years ago, ever since his ex-fiancée, Charlotte Hale, left him at the altar. Not because of love lost, but because of politics. His family's empire couldn't afford the scandal of Charlotte's father being under federal investigation. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about control. Lucas had learned, painfully, that in his world, love was a liability. So when he asked a soaked delivery girl to act as his date, it wasn't out of whimsy. It was strategy. She was unknown, unremarkable, unthreatening. Or so he thought. The wedding was extravagant, the kind where even the napkins smelled like roses flown in from Tuscany. Elena stood beside Lucas, feeling like a mannequin in a thrift store dress someone had ironed for the first time. But she didn't embarrass herself. In fact, she played her role too well. When people whispered, "Who's the girl with Lucas?" they meant it with curiosity, not disdain. She smiled. She didn't talk too much. And when Lucas's ex glanced over with a tinge of envy, Lucas felt it. For the first time in years, he won something that couldn't be measured in dollars. But what he didn't realize was that Elena wasn't pretending. Not entirely. Because deep inside her, beneath the exhaustion and practicality, was a girl who once dreamed of moments like this. Of being seen, desired, noticed. And when Lucas asked her to dance, she hesitated, but then placed her hand in his. And for 2 minutes and 37 seconds, under the golden light of that ballroom, they danced, not as strangers, not as a bet, but as two lonely people, trying to remember what being human felt like. The next morning, everything changed. Elena expected to return to her delivery job. Pretend yesterday was just a strange, lucky detour. But instead, she got a text. Lucas Bennett, I need you again. Tonight, it's a charity gala. I'll send a car. She didn't reply. But at 6 p.m., she found herself sitting in the back of a black Escalade. Heart pounding, clutching a borrowed clutch. The gala was worse than the wedding. Here, the stakes were higher. The judgments were sharper. And someone recognized her, not as Lucas's date, but as the delivery girl from Sterling Towers. Wait, is that the same girl who brings sushi on Thursdays? Someone whispered. Another laughed. Did he pick her up from a soup kitchen? The words sliced. Lucas didn't defend her. Not then. He was too busy charming investors. Elena stood beside a champagne fountain, fingers trembling around her glass. And that's when it happened. One of Lucas's friends, drunk, smug, and curious, cornered her by the balcony. You know, he slurred. We had a bet going. Lucas needed to show up with someone, unpolished, unexpected, just to shut Charlotte up. Elena froze. What do you mean, a bet? He laughed. You didn't know? Oh honey, he didn't tell you? Her throat tightened. She turned away. Lucas found her minutes later, standing alone, looking out over the city skyline. Elena, he began. I was going to explain. Don't, she whispered. Please don't. He reached out. She stepped back. You needed a performance. I gave you one. Consider it paid in full. And with that, she walked away. Not just from the gala, but from him. And Lucas? For the first time in years, he didn't know how to fix something money couldn't buy. Lucas didn't sleep that night, nor the night after. He stared at his ceiling, haunted by the silence Elena left behind. Her absence didn't echo, it settled, like dust on things you didn't know you'd miss until they stopped shining. He tried texting, calling, nothing. By the fourth day, Lucas did something he hadn't done in years. He canceled a meeting. And by the fifth, he was standing outside a small diner in Queens, holding a paper bag of cinnamon rolls and coffee with her name scribbled on the side. The waitress pointed him to the back, where Elena sat by the window in her delivery uniform, quietly flipping through a medical pamphlet. It wasn't until he sat down that he saw the page, Cerebral Palsy in Adolescence. Is this about your brother? He asked gently. She didn't flinch. Tyler, he's 16, needs around-the-clock care. Lucas looked at her, really looked, and saw her exhaustion wasn't just from a bad night's sleep. It was the kind that builds over years of choosing others before yourself. I didn't know, he whispered. That's the problem, Lucas, she said quietly. You never asked. The twist wasn't in her past. It wasn't a revelation about her being a secret heiress or a disguised genius. No, it was something simpler, more devastating, a truth so invisible that most people never even pause to notice. Elena Carter had been surviving her whole life, not out of weakness, but out of relentless, unseen strength. She wasn't a charity case. She was a provider, a fighter, the girl who delivered sushi by day and changed feeding tubes by night, who sold her old books online to pay for her brother's physical therapy, who borrowed gowns from neighbors to pretend for a man who didn't even bother to ask who she really was. Lucas listened. For the first time, he didn't speak, didn't offer solutions, didn't pull out a checkbook. He simply sat there, the weight of her truth settling into the cracks of his carefully constructed world. You know, she said, after a long silence, I never cared that it was a bet. He looked up. I cared that you didn't stop it, that you let them laugh, that you stood beside me and said nothing. Her voice didn't tremble. It was calm, final. Lucas felt something rise in his throat, not guilt, not shame, but a grief he couldn't name. I thought, he began, that you'd disappear like the others. But you didn't. You stayed. And then, you walked away. And now I can't seem to follow. Elena stood up, and for a moment, it looked like she would walk away again. But instead, she placed something on the table. A folded napkin. Inside, a photo. It was her, 10 years younger, holding a little boy with a feeding tube, smiling under a broken umbrella, next to an old woman. On the back, scrawled in ink, "We don't need to be rescued. Just seen." Then she left. Lucas sat alone for hours. The photo in his hand, her voice in his head, and something in his chest, finally breaking open. He knew then. This wasn't about her walking away. It was about him never learning how to stay. It was raining the morning Lucas showed up at her building again. No driver, no umbrella, just him, drenched, shivering, and holding a worn-out box in his arms. The security guard looked startled. "You okay, sir?" Lucas nodded. "I just need 2 minutes." The elevator was out of service, so he walked up 5 flights. By the time he reached her door, his shirt clung to him like a second skin. He knocked once, twice. Elena opened the door in silence. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired, like someone who had stopped expecting anything from people like him. "I came to return something," he said. He handed her the box. She hesitated, then took it. Inside, nestled in soft fabric, was the necklace she had worn at the wedding. The one she borrowed, the one he never noticed until she left it behind. And beneath it, a letter, handwritten, shaky in some places, as if he'd rewritten parts over and over. "I grew up thinking power meant money, silence meant strength, and that you only mattered if someone needed you. But then I met someone who didn't need me." She didn't beg. She didn't chase. She just stood quietly and made the world kinder with every step she took. And for the first time, I wanted to matter. Not to shareholders, not to my board, not to society. To her. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, you weren't a bet to me. You were the one thing I didn't realize I was losing, until you walked away." Elena didn't cry. She read every word, then placed the letter on the table, walked into the next room, and came back holding a small hand. Tyler, 16, in a wheelchair, eyes wide and curious. "Tyler," she said gently, "this is Lucas." Lucas crouched down, looking the boy in the eye. "Hey, man, I've heard a lot about you." Tyler nodded, then raised his hand for a fist bump. Lucas's smile cracked wide open. And just like that, the space between them wasn't filled with apologies anymore, but with presence, with choice, with something like beginning again. 6 months later, the media had a field day. Billionaire CEO sells downtown penthouse, moves to Queens to open community center for special needs families. But Lucas didn't care. He no longer lived for the headlines. He lived for early morning grocery runs with Elena, for pushing Tyler's chair through the park, for building ramps with his own hands even when he could have paid someone else to do it. The center was named, "The Quiet Kind," because sometimes, the loudest strength doesn't shout. It shows up. It stays. At the opening ceremony, someone asked Lucas, "What changed you?" He paused, looked at Elena and Tyler laughing together near the lemonade stand, and simply said, "One girl, who didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't hate me. She just saw through me, and walked away. And somehow, that saved my life." And you? Maybe you're not a CEO. Maybe you'll never own a company. Maybe you're just someone trying to be seen. But if you ever doubt the power of your quiet strength, remember Elena. She didn't have a voice in the room full of suits. She didn't fight back when mocked. She didn't need anyone to fix her. She just waited for someone brave enough to stop betting on appearances and start choosing what truly matters.